When I was growing up on Elm Place in New Jersey, in Nutley, New Jersey, every single home had its version of pot roast. At our house, the pot roast was born out of frugality. It was a dish made with inexpensive cuts of meat and basic root vegetables cooked together in the same pot. And that meal stretched to make meals for days to come, even in a family like ours of 6 kids and 2 adults. And today, well, the pot roast is still a favorite money-saving dish. This is one of my favorite things to do, braise a nice chunk of meat like this chuck eye roast. First step is to brown the meat. Very essential. You want a good-looking piece of brown meat when you're finished. And you can't brown meat in liquid. It just won't brown. Even in the oven, it just won't brown if there's any moisture whatsoever. So we're going to brown the meat first in a little bit of olive oil right in the pot in which we're going to make the pot roast. Before you brown it, put some salt and pepper all over it. A generous amount, rub it into the meat. Pre-seasoning is a really important part of the process. It's good to keep a piece of paper, parchment paper, under the meat. That way you really keep your counter clean. And when working with raw meat, remember to wash your hands after, and remember your pepper should be freshly ground, your salt a good quality. Okay, ready to start browning. Quite hot in the bottom of this pan. You're going to hear a lot of sizzling there. And don't try to turn the meat until it easily releases. It'll tell you when it's ready to turn. Smells good already. Now, most pot roasts, most braises start with a mirepoix, which is a combination of aromatic vegetables, generally an onion, a carrot, and a stalk of celery. And we're just going to cut the onion into thin slices like this. Coarsely chop the celery and carrots, which have been peeled. The same combination of vegetables is called a sofrito in Italian. So they're ready to go. I think we can try to turn the meat. Lifting easily. This is a very wonderful piece of meat browning perfectly. Look at that fabulous color that it's getting. That's what you want on your finished pot roast. You'd want a nice dark exterior and a well-cooked, silky result. The meat has been tied. That holds the shape. The browning of the meat takes about 8 to 10 minutes. Have patience. It's worth it. Now remove the meat to a baking sheet. There. Great looking. So delicious. And now to the pot. Just add your lovely onions, your thyme, bay leaf, peppercorns, carrots, and celery. And you don't really want to brown the onion as much as make it translucent in the olive oil. For most braising, you would have this kind of a base of vegetables in the bottom of the pan. This takes 2 or 3 minutes. And if they start to cook too much, you can add just a little bit of water to stir up the brown bits. And I'm going to do that right now, just a little bit. Well, the onion has softened, the celery too. Carrots take a little bit longer because they're harder, but it's ready and time to add the flour. Just 1 tablespoon of flour will do, and cook that well done. You don't want to have a floury taste. And the flour allows the liquid to be absorbed and sauce to thicken. If the flour is well done, add the rest of your water. And so altogether, we've added about 1 1/4 cups of water. Now, some people might want to add a little bit of red wine, beef stock, veal stock, vegetable stock. It really doesn't matter, but I think water just works very well, and about 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar for a little bit of acidity. So can you see how it's thickening? So now, just lower the heat so it's simmering but not boiling, and the liquid should come up only about 1 inch on the sides of the meat. And here goes our meat. Cover it tightly. And with less liquid in the pot, you'll need to watch it more carefully and turn the roast more frequently. Just cook, turning every 30 minutes until tender, 2.5 to 3 hours. So now the meat is quite beautiful. Remove it carefully to a baking sheet like this. You're going to put the meat back in, but we want to cook the rest of the vegetables. And we want to strain this gravy. So into a bowl, just strain, and we'll also take out a little bit of the fat. So all the aromatics have really cooked down. Press them through the sieve as much as you can. So this is basically the gravy and the sauce. Put this back into the pot, but you see you have a pretty nice brown gravy. It's very, very tasty. And the vegetables, about 3/4 pound of carrots, of turnips, and of tiny baby potatoes. You can use quarters or sliced potatoes, thickly sliced potatoes too. This is the nice turnip. And peel the turnip, and I'm cutting it into wedges, sort of like apples for an apple pie. And now turn the heat back on. Once this comes back to a simmer, put the meat back on top, cover, and cook for another 15 to 20 minutes or until the vegetables are tender to the point of a knife. So the meat is out of the gravy. It looks really tender and so delicious. Now remove carefully the trussing strings. Now it's important to let the meat rest for about 10 or 15 minutes, because if you try to slice it when it's really, really hot, it may just completely fall apart. This is a very tender cut of meat. Now that looks like pot roast. Grandma Gilbert's, Grandma Roskovsky's, Grandma Kostira's, my mother's, mine, and now yours. The meat has reached the right consistency. When it is silky, can be shredded easily. Now that looks really good, braised pot roast. So a stew is generally prepared with small cuts of meat, small cubes, with the addition of vegetables that are cooked in enough liquid to generously cover the entire thing. Now, this is slab bacon, and this is what we are going to render to start browning the beautiful piece of chuck I have in front of me. Cut the bacon into 1/2-inch cubes, and this goes right into your pan and start rendering the fat. This is a fatty slab bacon. So there we have our bacon rendering. Now this beautiful piece of chuck, cut this into nice squares. So while the bacon is melting, season with salt and pepper. Use kosher salt for this. You want to season generously. A little bit of pepper. So we'll save the lardons. These will be added back into your stew. And now just put your salted, peppered meat in the fat. You do not want to crowd the pan. And don't try to move them for a minute or two. As it's browning, you can be cutting up your wonderful mushrooms. You can use white button mushrooms. You could use shiitakes, but very nice bunch of mushrooms, 2 ounces of mushrooms, and some yellow onions cut up. 1 medium large onion peeled and cut into squares, and 4 cloves of peeled, finely minced garlic. Now adjust your heat while you're browning the meat. Let's take a look. See that wonderful caramelized color it gets? So you want to do each side, 6 sides to a cube. Now, meats won't brown at a low temperature, which is why it's very important to sear the meat on the stovetop first. If you don't do this, you will not have that nice, dark, rich stew that we are looking for. The meat looks very good. I will put the meat in the bowl with the rest of it. See how nicely colored this meat is. That is exactly the color you want. There's a little excess fat, and I'm going to pour it right into a reserve bowl. And now all those nice brown bits that are on the bottom of the pan, add some beef stock, 1 cup, preferably homemade if you have it. And this is a great wooden spoon. Has a flat bottom. In just a few strokes, releases all that stuff from the bottom of the pan. Try to find one of these if you can. Very good spoon to have. Okay, so now this liquid goes right over the meat. And look at the pan. Nothing in there. It's almost clean. So to this, on low heat, add a couple tablespoons of olive oil. I like to add the onions first. Cook until translucent. That takes about 3 minutes. Now you can add also 4 cloves of garlic finely minced. If you don't like garlic, you can omit the garlic in this stew. And now you can add your mushrooms, cleaned and cut in half, stems removed. And cook this for, just about 2 minutes, just until they start to soften. So there, the mushrooms are soft, the onions have a nice color, and they are nicely translucent, and it's time to thicken the stew. And we do this by adding 2 tablespoons of flour, all-purpose flour. Sprinkle it over your onions and mushrooms, and stir that around. You must cook that flour to make it palatable. So we're cooking it over low-medium heat, and for added flavor, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. This adds just a little bit more flavor. And it smells very good. And now you see that the bottom of the pan has, again, accumulated some brown bits. The flour has made everything a little bit sticky. We're going to add 2 cups of beef stock and stir this around. Now, here goes the meat. Boy, does that look good. And now, red wine, 2 cups. And now add a few sprigs of thyme and 2 bay leaves. Submerge them in the liquid. Now bring that to a boil, reduce to a simmer, cover, and you will cook it for approximately 1.5 hours, skimming every now and then, just taking off any excess fat. So, oh yes. Now look how much reduction has taken place. And the beef is beautiful, the mushrooms are tender. Now is time to add 1 pound of fingerling potatoes or Yukon Gold cut in half. These have to cook for another 25 minutes. So this is at the end of 1.5 hours where the meat is very tender. You're adding the potatoes. Now make sure we submerge those in the gravy. Really beautiful. And about 12 ounces or so of cipollini onions. These have been blanched and peeled. You can also use pearl onions, red or white. Cover again, and in approximately 25 minutes, the potatoes will be done. Check after about 20, just to make sure. Well, here's the stew. It looks good, and it is ready to serve. Look at the color. The meat is not falling apart, and yet it is totally fork tender. So beautiful. I think it's very nice. Oh, stir in the lardon. So now I like serving it in a heated bowl like this with some noodles. This small bowl will be welcomed by anyone you bring to your home. Look how pretty, a little bit of carrot, a little bit of vinegary, finely grated horseradish. and a little bit of chopped dill. Now that is beef stew at its best. Now here is another spectacular dish to serve on a special occasion. It is a crown roast of pork, or it will be a crown roast of pork. The roast is formed from the rib sections for two and tied into a circle to form a crown. And this dish is a British tradition dating way back to the Victorian era. When it comes to flavor and regal presentation, nothing rivals a crown roast of pork. So let me share my recipe with you. You'll need 2 racks of pork with 10 ribs. Ask your butcher to remove the shine bone, which is here. If left on, it would be absolutely impossible to carve the roast. So first thing you do when you get this home and are you ready to start cooking it is to cut down right between the ribs, just deep enough so that the meat will bend. You want these ribs to bend a little bit because this is the outside of the crown. Make sure that the butcher Frenches the bones. And this is 1 serving. 1 rib is 1 serving. So this could serve, I would say, anywhere from 14 to 20 people. And the same on this one. Make sure your knives are sharp. This is beautifully sharp. It's cutting through this pork very nicely. This is great for a special occasion, Christmas time, New Year's Eve. It's also nice if your family loves pork to serve on a holiday like Thanksgiving, which is traditionally turkey, as you know. See how it bends now? It wouldn't bend like that unless you did these cuts. Now, form your crown. The idea is to get this one attached to this one. We're going to use a needle and thread. Really, a needle, a meat needle, and some string. Cotton string is good. So go through this way and just go through here. It's fun to do something like this. Of course, if you have a really good butcher, he will do this for you. But it's also fun to learn how to do it yourself. Now tie that into a knot. And so I have that butted up. Now I want to get this one a little bit tighter here too. So just take your needle and go through again a little bit lower. Practice being a surgeon. I've always loved doing this kind of creative cooking. And again, tie this. All these strings will be removed after the meat is roasted, and it will hold together very nicely by itself. So that's one side. Do the same to the other side. Now, to make sure that this roast stays in this beautiful crown shape, I suggest doing one more tie right below the ribs. And take your string and go right under the ribs and give it a nice little tight tie. This will ensure a crown when it comes out of the oven, which is, of course, the entire object of this lesson. You see, that holds it very nicely. So now rub all over with a generous amount of salt and pepper. Perfect. Now the meat should stand like this for 30 minutes. And while it's standing there, I'm going to make a marinade that's going to be put over the meat. In a small bowl, mix parsley. About 2 tablespoons is good. 2 cloves of garlic. A tablespoon of chopped sage. Sage goes very nicely with pork. And the zest of a lemon. On the standing rib roast, we used orange zest. On pork, I love the taste of lemon. And now add, a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil. And just rub this all over the meat. And I find that really the most effective way to get this everywhere is to put it on with your fingers. Make sure you also get a little bit on the bones. It is fragrant and utterly delicious. So now transfer this roast to a 425 degree oven and roast for 15 minutes, then reduce the heat to 375. And roast, rotating halfway through until the meat is well browned and an instant read thermometer registers 140 degrees. That's going to take about 2 hours and 15 minutes. So here is the gorgeous crown roast of pork. When you test for a temperature in a roast like this, go straight down on this side of the rib bone down to the center of the crown. It should be 140 before you take it out of the oven. And let the roast sit on the rack just like this, 20 minutes or so, before you move it to a platter. And look how nicely it lifts. It's very heavy and very regal. Center it on the platter and take the strings off. So use a little scissor like this and pull all the strings out. There. And now, put your stuffing in the center. We've made a wonderful stuffing out of wild and white rice, celery, and dried apricots and prunes, a stuffing that really, really goes very well with the pork. Just mound it up in the center. Can you imagine this on your Christmas table? That is glorious. And you can garnish with pretty herbs around the base, some rosemary. It looks pretty just like that. You could even put some ripe plums. If this were for Christmas, it's starting to look not only like a crown, but also like a Christmas wreath. That looks very pretty. I think simple is better. And now for the crowning glory, don't forget the pantalooni tunis. And here they are. I've always called it that. Who knows why? You can make these or buy them. Now, I think that's spectacular, don't you? Preserved lemons, which are very essential to this particular recipe, are lemons that have been preserved in a salt-lemon mixture for about 30 days. This is a preserved lemon. It's packed in a jar with salt. Lemons done like this have a silky texture and a very distinctive, unusual flavor, and they're very widely used in Moroccan cooking. The initial purpose of preserving lemons in salt and their own juice was to make lemons, a winter fruit, last all year long. Once you preserve the lemons, it is just the rind. This is the rind of one lemon. We're going to use this in our marinade. You can just cut it into smaller pieces and put into a food processor. About a half a cup of rosemary leaves. Seems like a lot, but not for such a big piece of lamb as we have here. 2 cloves of garlic, and you can roughly cut these up just so that the food processor doesn't have to work so hard. And some leaves. These are beautiful mint leaves, a very nice accompaniment for lamb. You can again just coarsely cut these up and put these into the processor. And some salt, some pepper, and you can just grind it up a little bit and process with about 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. It's almost like making a pesto. Now the lamb is exactly as I received it from the butcher, beautifully prepared as a butterfly, but it really should be a little bit thinner. And you can do that yourself at home between 2 pieces of plastic wrap and use a meat tenderizer or a mallet. Don't use the prickly side, that will tear through the plastic, but just use the smooth side and pound until it's pretty much all the same thickness so that it will cook nice and even. And you can spread half of this mixture on one side of the lamb and half on the other. A most really fragrant mix. You can fill every little nook and cranny, but just half on this side. There. Now fold your meat in half. We want to fit it into a shallow pan. And another bit all over this side. And this you can just lift up and slide into your pan. And you've made very little mess. Use the rest, that last quarter of your marinade on this side. This will, overnight, really flavor the lamb. That is perfect. Use your plastic to cover over the lamb and refrigerate at least 8 hours, preferably overnight. So here's our gorgeous marinated big hunk of lamb. It looks really good. We're getting ready to roll it. Though the cut can be very pricey, this leg of lamb, it is very straightforward to prepare, even for the novice home cook, and it is one of the most popular lamb cuts that we have. Now the lemon, we need just the peel, so I'm taking away that pulp. For this, it's very nice to see the strips of lemon in the meat. Cut the strips quite thinly so that they are easily eaten. A big chunk will be a little strong. There. So that's your lemon peel. So now put your lamb on a board and spread the lemon peel all over the inside. This is going to be rolled up, so put this all evenly spaced on the inside. Lamb takes a lot of seasoning very nicely, and salt and pepper in the roasting process is very important. Oh, for all cuts of lamb. Now roll up, narrow end to big end. Tucking in any little loose pieces. And here you are going to behave like a butcher. You are going to be tying this roast together with butcher's twine. It's slippery. Now, cut a piece of string about 6 feet long, and this is cotton butcher's twine. Everybody has a different method for tying a roast. Slide your string under and tie into a strong knot. Butchers can do this so quickly. There. Okay, so now we are going to blanket stitch your roast. Take the string underneath. Just take the whole bunch of string like this and pull it through. It is the blanket stitch that is one of the first embroidery stitches you learn when you're learning embroidery. There, now you can go around this way under the whole roast and tie this to the other side. So you have a perfect roast, as nice as the butcher would do it. And now get this into your roasting pan, a parchment liner in the pan, a rack for the meat, and put this whole roast into a preheated 450-degree oven for 25 minutes. Then add half a cup of water. Reduce the heat to 400 degrees and continue roasting 35 minutes or so. Let the lamb rest in the pan out of the oven for about 30 minutes before you carve it. Snip off your trussing strings, and I'd slice the lamb, approximately between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch thick. And you can arrange as you wish on your platter. Garnish with wedges of fresh lemon, and there you have a really, really gorgeous platter.